Hi everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of DigiByte and Friends. It's great to have you here. I am joined today by Craig from Nav Coin. Craig, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to hang out and talk about stuff.
Yeah, no worries, man. Glad to be a part of this.
Yeah. So you're from NavCoin. Do you want to give us a real quick, maybe a 30-second elevator pitch? How you got involved in it, maybe?
Yeah, well, the history of NavCoin, I think, is relatively similar to that of DigiByte. We, started around 2014, and we started with no ICO and all launched just as a public permissionless blockchain, and a really community-driven project, right?
Nice.
I actually came onto the project after it had launched. I found the project maybe a few months after it launched, and they needed some help. And just as it goes with these community things, it's really up to the community to get involved. And if you see that a project needs help. And so I did. So I started contributing, and I'm a software engineer by trade, so I was able to contribute first, just helping to maintain the websites and do stuff like that, and then sort of slowly get more involved into the actual blockchain sort of side of stuff.
Because it's not exactly a small leap to go from, say, for example, programming a website into coding up a wallet or...
Yeah, that was definitely the path for me, was like website stuff and then into like user interface stuff inside the wallet, and then using that as a gateway to understand more about the sort of peer-to-peer decentralized mechanisms that are behind blockchain technologies.
Nice. And I suppose that's probably a really good lead-in for us, because you are, with NavCoin, one of the other... there's not a lot of projects that are out there that have fairly launched in that same kind of a manner, that have that same sort of a history. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's kind of, I suppose, unique about NavCoin, specifically maybe around like your DAO, how you're doing all of your voting and things? Lay it on us.
Yeah, well, probably a good place to start is like why it was created in the first place, right? Back in 2014. So, at that time we were starting to see a whole bunch of altcoins come through, there was, coins for so many coins, coins for each season and color and all sorts of stuff. It was crazy. It was like the Wild West.
It was.
But
it was a good time though.
Yeah, it was totally good. So NavCoin was launched through Bitcoin talk forums,
Yep. As everything was back then.
The OG, yeah. And we wanted to, well, the ethos behind it, as I said, I didn't actually launch it, but the thing that attracted to me was the fact that it wanted to do proof of stake, which was pretty new back then.
Yep.
It also wanted to do fast transactions and fast block times as well,
Yep.
fast confirmations, and it had a real concentration on privacy. So in 2014, privacy in blockchain was like quite a new thing, and that's one of the things that really attracted me to this project, was wanting to be part of something new and part of something that was developing new and interesting privacy protocols.
Nice.
So that's kind of where it all started, and we've evolved a lot since then, to be honest. And we're still proof of stake and all that kind of stuff, but we've been trying to add like more blockchain and more decentralized features as we go. In terms of the privacy stuff, actually, we deprecated the original privacy option that we launched back in 2015, and we've been working on some research stuff in that field at the moment. But some of the cool stuff that we have launched on the blockchain is the decentralized autonomous organization stuff.
Yep.
So
for people who are new, who probably don't understand the acronym, with a DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations, obviously a mouthful and a half. Do you want to let us kind of know what it is about that? What's some of the cool stuff that you're doing with it? And
totally. Well, I think just like to explain it a bit more, like what is a DAO, right? So we hear it referred to a lot in the industry, but it's one of those acronyms that people might not necessarily know or even really understand what it is and how it works. So I think just explaining it like, any sort of public permissionless blockchain already is a form of decentralized autonomous organization, I would say. What we're agreeing on through that organization is generally just the transactions, right? We're validating transactions in a decentralized and autonomous way.
A consensus of who's sent who.
Absolutely.
And that's about it.
It's a consensus of the ledger, right? So through software, we're making decisions around what's valid, what's not. And, we're agreeing as an organization on what the latest current state of the blockchain is, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So if you take that concept, we can extend it to have other purposes, right? So, we could use this computer network to decide other things as well. So one of the things which we introduced was the NavCoin Community Fund,
Nice.
where we take, how do I explain it? Half of the mining reward for NavCoin is 2 NavCoin per block, and we have half a NavCoin which gets burnt to this community fund. And it's effectively like a developer fund, but it can be used for other things as well. It's not just development, like we've had marketing ideas and all sorts of other stuff funded with this.
Nice.
But because we did the fair launch, no ICO, community-driven approach, even though our hearts are all in the right place, it's still, we're competing with coins who have run billion-dollar ICOs and have a lot of money behind them. So, funding is always a difficult thing, and we don't want to, we didn't want to instigate something crazy where we try and mint new coins or try and sort of extract extra funds out of the blockchain directly. And it's not even about funding us; it's just about having this open funding model where actually anyone can apply
For the project as a whole, really, rather
Yeah.
than just for coding cool new stuff.
Yeah, the sort of ethos behind it is that anyone can apply for funding, right? So you could say, it could have nothing to do with NavCoin. You could say, I want to buy a 6-pack of beer if you wanted. And you could submit a proposal, and if the network votes to give you however many NavCoin a 6-pack of beer costs, then it's yours. I mean, it's...
Just going to take down some notes over here, one moment.
It's what it really breaks down for me is removing the barrier of access to get involved with these projects and find funding, right?
Right.
So at the moment, if you look at another type of governance system, and a DAO is like a governance system, right? You look at government, like democratic government. Yeah, you have representatives and you have legislations that get passed and all this type of stuff, but it's a very slow process, and it's also just anyone who has a good idea. It's really hard to get that idea through that process and become part of the law,
Yes.
Whereas we're talking about people being able to enact change inside the NavCoin ecosystem without that barrier to entry. So anyone can create a proposal.
Cool.
They could go, you know what, I want to do this or I want to do that. And if the network agrees that that's a good thing for the project, then it gets voted in. And you can submit it anonymously. There's no need to, it doesn't have to come from a representative or a proposal from me has the same validity as a proposal from a complete newbie.
Me.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So what we should have done is gone and submitted a proposal for a 6-pack of beer for the first DigiByte and Friends to come from the DAO. People can reject it if they think, nah, Joe's a little bit of a clown sometimes. Let's not do that. Or they can go, yeah, actually, that sounds like a great way to start talking with people about both DAOs, DigiByte, about NavCoin, a whole bunch of stuff like that. So that's, and the network votes on it basically.
Yeah. So the way that we designed this was so there are sort of other DAO funding models that exist. Some of them are more centralized than others. Some of them have just a one-step process where the network will vote and then the funds are immediately released. We did a bunch of research and we tried to figure out, well, what do we want to do? And one of the things was to make it fully autonomous. So there's no
That's cool.
there's no no one from NavCoin core needs to approve and send money manually or anything like this.
So no CEO authorizing everything.
It all just happens completely autonomously. If the network votes for your proposal and it passes, the miner who mines the next block after the vote has passed will issue you those coins.
That's cool.
So it's just completely autonomous.
Nice.
So that was one of the big goals, and one of the other ones was to prevent malicious people from just robbing the fund, right? So we introduced this 2-step process where you vote for a proposal and it has an amount, and if it gets accepted, that amount becomes kind of escrowed, and then if I was running the proposal, then I could put forward a payment request as the second step, and
Right. Okay.
if it's a small proposal, it could be all at once. I might just do the work. And then let's say we did one for this podcast to sponsor it. We would put forward the proposal and get it approved. Then we would do the podcast.
Yep.
And then when the podcast gets published, the community would go, yes, you did the work. So it's kind of you get paid in arrears like normal contractors do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You do the work and then you issue an invoice and then the invoice gets paid.
But at the same time, you're then preventing clowns from coming along and saying, I'm going to go and do everything under the sun, and I'm going to take us to the moon
Yeah.
and build a rocket ship, and
Yeah.
you're all invited, and then not actually doing it. I guess you kind of be working around that by doing the two-step. What sort of do they still have to vote on that work subsequently? So, for example, if we said to everybody, we want a 6-pack of beer for the first DigiByte and Friends, and then like what happens afterwards? Do they then basically request that kind of proof, I suppose, and then vote on it again to say, yes, we're actually going to give it to you. You did a good job.
Yeah, so there's 2 rounds of voting. One is to approve and escrow the funds, and the second one is to release the funds.
That's
so
cool.
Usually you do the second one after you've done the thing.
Yep.
Or if it's a big project, you might go, look, I need 20% to get started, and then you can do multiple, right? So you could go, then I need, then I'll show you some wireframes for the website I'm going to build, some planning, and I'll get another 20%, and then here's the designs, here's another 20%, and then here's the finished product, here's the last 20%.
Cool.
You can kind of structure them however you want. It's quite freeform.
Nice.
But yeah, it's all completely autonomous and protected in that way, where it's I like to call it proof of effort is the consensus model. You can't say proof of work because that's already a thing. But,
Yeah, sorry, we're using that one already.
Proof of effort, right?
Yep.
So you got to prove that you've done the effort
yeah.
to get the money. You've contributed to the project in some way.
That's cool. And now one of the other things that we were talking beforehand as well is you've actually started to do some more, do you want to call them kind of like in-depth, some real juicy things with the DAO recently in terms of what can be voted on?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, we're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg of this DAO stuff, I think. It's a super interesting field. It's just kind of emerging at the moment, I think. It's one of the things that makes it real exciting for me is that it's actually exploring completely new territory, right? These types of organizations haven't existed on this planet before, and we're only like we just used it for funding, right? And that's only one aspect. You got to think of it like what other things. If this was a company, which it's not, but it's an organization, what other things does an organization need to do? One of the things that we wanted to introduce is the idea of consultations. So, we can put forward a community fund proposal. Let's say it's to change something to do with the consensus. And the way NavCoin works is all based on soft fork voting when we change consensus.
Cool.
So let's say we wanted to change the block reward from 2nav to 3nav. We could code that up and we could put it into a new software version and give the network the opportunity to upgrade or not upgrade, or and then when the way soft forks work is that if 75% of the network weight agrees that they want that change, so they've updated to the software and they've flagged it as yes, we want that change, then that would lock in as a change and then it becomes mandatory. So you get like a 1-week period where everyone who hasn't upgraded has to upgrade and get on board.
Yep, same for us with our AutoCrypt upgrade. You got that week stand-down period just to give people a chance to catch up if they were kind of going, I don't feel like upgrading, and you don't want to kick them off the network, so you get the opportunity to catch up.
Yeah. So this is great, and this is a form of getting the network consensus on whether they want these changes to happen or not. But when it comes to complex changes, like we're looking at introducing new privacy methods to NavCoin, which is quite a big consensus change.
Yeah, big change.
And it's a big change, and there's a lot of debate in our community about it, There's been some vulnerabilities in like previous crypto encryption sort of methods.
Even just recently, we've seen a bunch of them where they've printed coins off and things.
Yeah, Zcash, not Zcash, sorry. Was it? No, yes, Zero Cash. There was the Zero Cash vulnerability, which affected Zcash, Zero Cash, PivX, and whoever else. All the PivX clones. So that was and it affected us as well. We were looking at implementing Zero Coin as with confidential transactions, like the bulletproofs that are used in Monero.
Nice.
To provide privacy in NavCoin with a thing we called Zero CT. And we couldn't do it. We had to backpedal on it because there was this fundamental vulnerability in the cryptography of Zero Coin, which was part of what we were working on. So,
I know.
We did all this research and even got it to the point of being in the pull request and like being reviewed and tested and all this kind of stuff, and we had to pull it. And these things happen. But that raises a concern like around the no one wants their coins just to be devalued by random ones being printed. Like it's pretty rare that this type of event happens, but it's still possible. So it's worthy of having a debate, and everyone in the community has got a valid opinion and is able to have their voice heard.
Yep.
But before we go down this track of spending months and months of developer resource building this stuff and then testing it and all the stuff that's involved, it would be great to get like a finger in the air kind of feel of whether this is something that people want.
Like a quick show of hands, everybody who's here present, yay or nay.
So effectively, we're looking to use these consultations as ways of gauging sentiment of the network before we go to the bother of doing research to put forward a community fund proposal, to do the work to get it to soft fork. That could be a long period.
Yep.
And we just want to say, hey, what if we do X, Y, Z? Would the network is the network likely to agree to that and approve the soft fork?
Yeah, cool.
So we've got these options with these consultations, and it could be to do with network stuff, or it could be to do with completely off-chain stuff. So we could say, hey, we're thinking about changing the Nav logo from purple to green. What do you think? And we can just run these consensus votes.
That's quite cool.
And they're all on the blockchain, and it's all related to your staking weight, basically.
Sure.
So whenever you cast votes, you cast them when you mine a block. You attach like a series of votes to that about which proposals and which consultations you're voting what for. And so the more blocks you produce, the more votes you have per period, basically.
Nice.
So the more coins you have, the more blocks you produce.
Right.
So the more blocks you produce, the more votes you have.
That's quite cool.
It is cool. It's just the same way as the proof of stake consensus works, basically.
How do you stop some rich fella from coming in then and basically going, actually, I like the idea now of upping the block reward or something similar, or something along those lines?
Yeah,
Is it still...
I mean, it's definitely something which is a concern. One of the concerns that we've been talking about actively in the community is a lot of exchanges are starting to stake with the coins that they have in deposits on proof of stake coins.
Yep.
And this means it's not like they would still have a say in the sort of 51% attack type consensus of other chains, but with us they actually would actively be voting on proposals and consultations, or maybe not voting. Yep. And then maybe that means it's harder to get other proposals through because the percentage of coins aren't voting on it,
right?
Or whatever. There's all these implications,
yep.
right?
Yep.
So you have to kind of think, if there's a big whale that's got millions of coins and they start voting on things, the idea is that they should be voting in their own interest.
Yep.
And while printing more NavCoin is in their own interest, maybe in the short term, it's actually going to devalue their investment later on. So it's bad. So you kind of expect, you come from the position of everyone should be kind of selfish and self-interested.
Yes.
And they want the best for themselves, which means the best for the project.
Yep.
And you hope that these sort of things don't happen. One of the issues could be something like the exchanges where they don't have a necessarily vested interest in your project being successful or not. I mean, they do somewhat because they make money off trading fees and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So it's not totally false that they do have some vested interest, but I think
it's a good point. People, I mean, I suppose the part of it being permissionless is you have to expect that people are going to be selfish and act in their best interest, their own selfish interests. But in saying that, I can't think of anybody who would go out there, spend a truckload of money on a project and then devalue that for no reason, which devalues their own money. I mean, maybe some mad scientist who's doing it for shits and giggles, but otherwise...
The only viable solution I can think of is the only viable thing would be maybe just a straight up malicious actor, like a government or a competing blockchain that maybe wants to ruin your day. But it's pretty unlikely, I think.
Yeah.
But still, we have to think like this, right?
Yes.
We try and program these things with an adversarial mindset, right? So we think, okay, people are going to try and mess with us. What do we do? How do we anticipate that? And how do we make sure that it's attack resistant? And that was the whole ethos of Bitcoin. You just look at that, man. It's been through the ringer. It's been through heaps of vulnerabilities, heaps of governments saying that they're going to ban it, and left, right, the dark net and left, right, and center, all these bad things. It's indestructible because it's massively censorship resistant and has this adversarial thinking on lockdown. Yeah. It's such an important thing.
Yep. But I like that what you've done with your DAO, because you're taking it, and so instead of just saying what we're going to do is give you the money straight away for everything, you're then requiring that they go and do some of the work, or like you say, proof of effort first of all before they get released. So you can't have people taking you for a ride and going, yeah, I did like a dozen podcasts, I need a dozen beers for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a really good protection mechanism, and it's a bit of a proof of the type of adversarial thinking that we're trying to do. We're not just trying to always replicate what other projects are doing. We're trying to look at them, take the best ideas, sprinkle in a few of our own, and then come forward with just the next step.
Yeah,
that's kind of it. But so we got the community fund voting, then we got the consultations.
Yep.
The next thing that we have as well is, at the moment, like if we wanted to make our proposal to sponsor this, we have to say like the amount of NAV we're asking for.
Right.
One of the issues that we've seen come up a lot is that people like the idea of a proposal, but they don't necessarily think that it needs that much NAV coin to get off the ground.
Sure.
So they might think, like I like the idea, but I don't want to pay 25,000 NAV for your 6-pack of beers, which is fair comment.
Yeah.
So
some really expensive beers right there.
So what this new improvements has the facility to do is to set that the people voting are actually able to say, I vote yes, but I vote yes for 100 NAV for your 6-pack of beer,
right, or
whatever, right? So they get to attach an amount, and then it becomes more like what's the word I'm looking for?
You kind of just average them out.
Yeah. So it becomes more of a conversation between the person creating the proposal, and it's like
so it's not an all or nothing specifically.
Yeah. So at the moment, if we did our one for 25,000 NavCoin for the beers, people could go, I like the idea, but I'm never paying that much, and then we'd have to write a new proposal. So this and submit it for a different amount after talking to the community.
Right, so that proposal would get actively rejected by everybody, fall by the wayside, and then we'd have to go and do another one from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it becomes quite a slow process, whereas these things have a 6-week voting period window.
Right.
So we want, there's always conversations happening, and people are talking in the community, and they might justify, well, these are really good beers.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great podcast. We should get 25,000 NavCoin. And sometimes, you can change people's mind, and it becomes a bit about diplomacy and selling your idea to the community and getting them to understand the value of it.
Right.
But, sometimes it's just overestimating how much time it's going to be, and even your concept might change. You might go, actually, you know what, you're right, Mr. Staker. I think that I could do it for cheaper if I took on some of your advice.
Yep.
So it opens that to become more of a negotiation than just I want this much money.
Yep.
Yeah, and so they can vote on...
That's quite cool.
That makes those prices malleable, and so we're able to come to an agreement on how much we think that it's worth.
Right. So next time I'm not getting craft beer, they might say, look, sorry, you're stuck with Coronas or something.
Totally. and that can happen dynamically as we're voting on the proposal.
That's quite cool.
So that's one cool thing, and the other really interesting part is, I think, being able to vote on consensus parameters, basically, right?
That's juicy.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting one, and inside the code base we have a whole bunch of parameters. You have block time, you have block reward, you have confirmation time, all these kind of technical things.
Yep.
And we have soft forks going on. We have all this kind of stuff, and we're potentially able to adjust some of these parameters on the fly, depending on what the network has voted the last value of that to be in the consensus, right? Mm-hmm. So at the moment, if we wanted to update it, anyone could actually go ahead and update it. NavCoin is completely open source. We could say, you could come along and fork our code base and then just change the 2 nav per block to 10 nav per block, and then release a piece of software. And if the network upgrades to your version, then your version is the latest version of NavCoin, and now the reward is 10 nav per block.
Which would require me to get 75% of all the staking weight behind it.
So you'd have to convince the network, and all the staking weight would have to agree.
I don't think that's going to happen.
So obviously, no. You'd hope not. We've had many long conversations within the community about what the right type of inflation is and stuff like this.
Sure.
How much is competitive with other coins and all this type of stuff. So no, it probably would just get rejected. I don't think people would approve it. So, but the facility's there, and the idea is to make it so that these decisions can be made by the network, which is often, at the moment, is reliant on developers to do the work.
Yes.
But now we're able to tweak some of these things. Like maybe we want to say, we want gigabyte blocks for some crazy reason. or we want. I know, right? Every 30 seconds too. No. Or
What could possibly go wrong?
or yeah, we want 100.
Don't do that. Just for the record, don't do that.
We
That's
want
not gonna
100
work.
nav per reward. Or like some of the parameters. One of the things might be like the DAO, the funding model, right? The community fund. We might go, you know what? Now that exchanges have come online with staking, we want to lower the threshold to vote to get a proposal accepted, because we're struggling to get them across the line because there's more coins but not many of them are voting.
Right.
So we'd be able to like dynamically adjust that through a network consensus
Without
rather than having to release a new piece of software and do a
That's
soft
cool.
fork and like all this kind of crap.
So the software would be checking the blockchain for the latest consensus rules
Yeah,
and be
and
able
it
to
would
say,
go,
over the
"Oh,
last
well."
6 weeks we've been voting.
Yeah, and we pull that percentage amount, and then
That's
that's what
cool.
we calculate this voting period on.
Nice.
So it just makes it more dynamic, and it puts the power of the system like back into the hands of the network again, which is really what it's all about. Like any good developers in the blockchain space should basically be working their ass off to abscond themselves from all responsibility.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that you mentioned that as well, because the similar sort of thing happened with our recent AutoCrypt upgrade. Again, similar sort of thing where you've got to get 75% of the network to all be voting on it. Over the period for us was 7 days. And that actually happened without our founder's like direct involvement. He's off at the moment, busy working on a side project. He's busy working on his book as well, and so for the most part, he wasn't directly involved in that. And like you say, that's supposed to be one of the goals for anybody, any developer, any coder, any participant almost in the space, that it should be able to function without you. And that's what I really quite like about the DAO, and especially the way that you're bringing it into your project overall, not just to change certain consensus rules, but also to kind of gauge the community feel beforehand and go, hey guys, roughly, what are people feeling about our logo?
Yeah, totally.
That's cool. That's really cool stuff.
So it's really a governance model with effectively like referendums. You know, we're kind of holding like network referendums on whatever decisions we want to make, and anyone can kick them off. It doesn't have to come from us. Anyone can start this referendum. You know.
That would be super cool to see at like a genuine government level as well, especially given the referendums that New Zealand here, for people obviously who are international. We're going to be having some referendums next year when we vote in new government, but we've got to wait for another 18 months for those referendums to take place, and even then there's already been a lot of debate around the wording and things. For you to be able to do these semi-regularly and gauge the community's sentiment, feel, ideals and things, and go, how do you feel about this? That's freaking cool. And to do it regularly as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful feature. And this is just like the second evolution that we've come up with for this sort of decentralized autonomous organization. So, you know, and already is some really cool groundbreaking features. I feel like there's so much more to explore down this road.
Yep.
Like one of the things that I know is going to become a hot topic in this area is how do you decide who's got to vote, right?
Yep.
Like at the moment, it's just based on our network consensus, which is proof of stake, which means the more coins you have, the more votes you have.
Sure.
But that makes it effectively like a sort of crypto oligarchy, where the people with the most money have the most say.
Yep.
But they also should have they have the most invested in the project, so you'd hope that they have the most vested interest in doing the right things for the project.
Yeah, well, so it kind of comes back to before, where you're not going to go out and spend $1 million on buying NavCoin to then devalue it so that your $1 million investment's now only worth $100,000.
Yeah.
You'd hope not.
You'd hope not. Yeah. But
Yep.
some like there's other ways to think about it, you know, like in proof of work, instead of using how many coins, you use how much hashing power to decide consensus, right? So how many computations per second you can do. So if that was to have a DAO, it would do the same thing. It would be basically the miners who are the ones who are voting in that, and that would be similar to how we do it with our miners are voting, but they're using computing power and we're using coin balance.
Yep.
There's other ideas, like I know that there's other DAO other people, you know, investigating and researching this DAO area, and some of it was to have it decoupled from your balance somewhat. So you have like a reputation score that's stored on the blockchain.
Right.
So there's some interesting things that you can do there, but I mean, it makes it kind of like less permissionless, I think, and more trustful. Like I could do things to game that system and build up reputation, maybe on multiple accounts or whatever, and then suddenly I've got like more reputation than one person should have. Or I have to identify myself and like do like proof of identification that I'm a single individual, almost like registering to vote, you know. And there's all these other concerns that come with decoupling it from the pure blockchain mathematics.
That was an interesting thing that I saw specifically around votes and votes being cast on the blockchain is if you have to declare yourself and if you have to identify yourself and say, I'm Joe, this is my vote on a public ledger, then you can be swayed because people could basically blackmail you into doing a vote a certain way. Your vote is then made public, so even if you say to somebody, actually, I voted this way, when you realistically voted that way, they can see that you're lying to them, and it opens up a whole different can of worms if you do have to make yourself public on a public ledger.
Identities become a commodity, right? People might, you know, a really extreme, on the way extreme end of the example could be like, people might, if this became a whole thing and all governments were run like this, people might have human farms or like human trafficking where they like take people for their identity because then they can vote, use those identities to vote towards stuff. So that's like sci-fi level, like in the on the dystopian end of things.
But that sort of thing does happen, I suppose, in terms of people knowing if your amount that you have is public, then we're already seeing that. I saw somebody who was in. Actually, let's not go into the country. It was in a country, and his family was captured and kidnapped, and he was blackmailed because people knew how much money he had because they'd found his public address.
Right.
And they basically said, we know exactly how much you've got, send it to us. So the idea is, I suppose, I like what you're talking about in terms of not having to have a reputation score for it because there's risks involved.
Yeah, there is. There definitely is. You know, that's where potentially like privacy things come into play as well, though. You know, there's some debate in our community at the moment around like whether or not to, once we do implement private transactions, to have private staking or not. One of the one of the things about that is it's really awesome because it means that every time you stake, you're not doxing your balance, you know, and your votes are tied to your address, and you know it could make this whole voting system much more anonymous and stuff like that. You start to alleviate some of the worries you're talking about, like people going, oh, that whale's voting this way, like we should try and maybe blackmail him or figure out who he is and try and get him to sway his vote or whatever. You know, but then there's a problem that if there's some type of issue found with the cryptography, if your staking is private, and if someone's able to inflate that somehow through broken cryptography, they might be able to 51% attack your network real easy with fake coins. You know, so there's all these pros and cons, and they have to be really thought about. It's super interesting, and it just buzzes me out.
For sure, and so I think, especially, that's not the sort of thing that often, I suppose, gets talked about. At least it's not the kind of thing that I've regularly talked about, but it is the sort of thing that being involved with this aspect of it comes up daily, and you almost have to presume that everybody is adversarial and take that kind of devil's advocate position and say, well, what if the worst happens? What if the worst happens? Again, similar sort of thing with us when we were looking at our AutoCrypt upgrade. What if the worst happens? What if this happens? And I mean, you kind of, it's similar to the whole, a developer obviously needs to be actively removing themselves at all times, the same sort of thing. You've got to be presuming the worst at all times because it is a permissionless network. You can't have a gatekeeper saying no.
Absolutely. What's tell me a bit about this update that you guys are doing.
So
what's going on?
Yeah, so we completed it in the end of July. AutoCrypt was a replacement of one of our algorithms, which was quite cool. So this one is specifically FPGA focused. The idea being that we wanted to bring further decentralization and distribution. I actually just published some statistics recently about, if you look at the last, I think it was 86 days worth of mining, and we took sort of Bitcoin, Litecoin, and DigiByte, and we compared them, and we basically said, now that we've got this new mining algorithm in, the idea being that we can have more home miners and small-time miners and the likes, how is our distribution going? And it was really, really good. Stats were looking great. But similar to NavCoin, we're also very much a continuous development sort of project, I suppose, is probably one of the better ways to word it. Similarly, like you say, you've carried on going from 2014, adding, improving, changing, and growing. we're also very much the same. And so that's where the curiosity, I suppose, around staking has been for us, because they were looking to replace one of those mining algorithms with staking. So it's fascinating to hear some of your insights there as well, because it is directly applicable to us, especially as the community wants to look into it. But again, then having the DAO and being able to go, yeah, okay, roughly only 10% of people may be interested in staking for us. Something like that would be really cool to be able to gauge that sentiment at the same time.
Yeah, well, there's all these possibilities, right? Like, I think especially decoupling it from money, like, the type of DAO that you could introduce might not have the funding aspect to start with. You might go straight for the on-chain consultation model, where you can run these sort of multi-choice or ranking sort of polls on your network. I guess it would be going out to your mining network, right? If it was following the same architecture as ours, then the miners would get to have their say on whether or not they want to change to proof of stake.
Yep.
I guess one of the things with there's quite a big difference between proof of work and proof of stake when you think about it, like in terms of the investment, right? So with proof of stake, you invest in the coins primarily, and then the computer system to run it's trivial. It can be your home desktop or whatever.
Yeah. You just got to have it online 24/7 and accessible.
Yeah. Whereas with mining, often the investment is into hardware, and you don't need to actually have the coins themselves to do the mining.
Yep.
So you might find that maybe the mining network isn't so keen to throw out all of their mining equipment and buy coins instead.
Yes.
So, you have these issues with like incumbent systems where people are like, well, I'm voting and I'm voting in my own best interest.
Yep.
But, that conversation, proof of stake versus proof of work aside, like it can be useful for so many other things, right?
Yeah. We had that. It was quite funny because so in the lead up to the replacement of the algorithms, we have five algorithms for those who aren't too familiar, and each of them are competing for every single block simultaneously. So we're a little bit different from the likes of, say, X16R, where everybody's like, right, next block we're going to do this one, and then next block we're going to use this algorithm.
Okay.
With us, the five are all vying for that pole position every single time against each other.
Okay.
And so it was really interesting because coming up to the lock-in for AutoCrypt, we could see that certain algorithms were less keen on the idea of the algorithm replacement. So we were looking to replace Myriad Grostal. Obviously, the Myriad Grostal miners were less happy about that happening, given the fact that they're about to be made obsolete.
Yeah.
But we could see the SHA-256 and the Scrypt miners were straight away like, you know what, that's actually a really great idea. And between them, I think they each had around about 90 to 95% within like a week or something, and each of their votes are roughly worth 20% of the block rewards, give or take. Yeah. So the fact that you mentioned that is very much something we have direct experience with, and it was really funny seeing that because we could see that there were initially some of the Myriad Grostal miners that were behind the idea, even though they were going to be not able to mine with Myriad Grostal anymore. So it's interesting, and this is, I suppose, coming back to the presumption that everybody is going to be acting in their own best interests. It's interesting because even though their own best interest would be to continue to mine with Myriad Grostal for the security of the network, I'm presuming that enough of them basically decided, yeah, we're happy to take one for the team and swap out that algorithm with a better one.
Totally. Well, it's a complex calculation as to what is the best thing for an individual.
Yes. It's
not always just like, like we talked about before. It's not like increase the block reward to 100 to have a block. Often people aren't that short-sighted, right? So I hope these people that are voting, even though it might cause them some short-term financial change, that they need to buy new hardware, or they need to do something different, or mine a different coin with that hardware, or whatever. Yep. They can see the benefit of the long-term results, and overall think that it's a good move.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was actually really quite timely, you kind of mentioning that as well. So they're sitting there going, I can understand that. Yeah. Did you want to also have a bit of a chat with us about your, say, for example, your wallets and things? What have you got going? I downloaded your Android wallet. It looked really familiar because we use a similar one on our desktop, Copay.
Yeah.
anything exciting happening there? Or, do you need to be running staking, I presume, from the desktop, from your core wallet?
Yeah, well, we've got a few options, and we've got a few things under development in that space, I suppose. We've got the traditional, like core wallet, which is what the majority of people stake on, and it's either you got the desktop like graphical interface version with Qt, or you've got the command line that you can run just through terminal. Beyond that, we used to have like a Raspberry Pi miner.
Nice.
But our blockchain with blocks every 30 seconds, we've got so many blocks that the poor little 1 gig of memory couldn't deal with it anymore. So we had to basically grandfather those. We've been working to
we know the feeling, unfortunately.
release. We've been what's your guys' block time?
15 seconds.
15 seconds.
So we're at 9.5 million blocks, and when you factor in XYZ kilobytes per. It basically, I think we're using 3.6 gigs or so at the moment, so 64-bit only.
Yeah, I think the real issue comes just with the number of blocks. You have to load all of those block headers from the database into memory, basically. So, I mean, it's still not, we're not talking huge numbers. The average laptop has 8 or 16 gigs of RAM these days.
Plenty.
And we're talking about, oh no, this little 1 gig device can't handle it. It's pretty edge case. But
compared to, say, for example, EOS, which needs, what is it, like a terabyte of memory or something? It's nothing. Anybody can
chump change.
Yeah.
But we've been working to release a new version of the software for the Odroid. Have you seen those?
Yes.
So they're quite beefy for what they are. They're quite powerful. So that's something that we've been working in the community to deploy. I helped to build the first version of that new web interface for it, and I've handed the baton off to some of the community members who are working to get it as a like Debian package, so that it can run on basically any Linux system actually.
Right.
And what that gives you is like a little web server that runs a web interface that talks to NavCoin core on the device. So I can run it on a little headless device, like a Odroid or another small server in my house, and I can just log into it as a web page.
Nice.
But then I can send coins and receive coins and do all the
and you don't have to SSH into it and muck around and be a terminal guru.
No, and you get the actual interface.
That's
graphics.
cool.
So that one's cool. And we got the NavPay, which is the mobile wallet, which is based off CoPay. And we've got that works on as a light wallet on Android, as a native app on Android. Well, I mean in the Play Store on Android. On iOS, we couldn't get it through the Apple Store, so it's just a progressive web app that you can download by visiting navpay.navcoin.org. Or you can just use it as a web wallet. Cool. Or it's also a desktop wallet too, so you can so you can have it as a desktop light wallet as well.
Completely understand having to battle the Apple walled garden. I think
powers that be at Apple.
So for ours,
we had a tricky conversation.
I'm pretty sure we'd been submitting it for over 9 months, and I think we were on the 25th or 26th time we'd submitted it.
It's
not fun.
I got the old. This application doesn't comply with our terms because it has unverified cryptocurrency or something in it.
Yes.
Like an unsanctioned cryptocurrency. And I was like, okay, how do I get sanctioned? And they're like, can't tell you. It's like, well, what? So I can't. You can't even give me information to like register our crypto so it complies with your thing. It's really frustrating.
We had several chats with them and several calls even, and one of our guys even went into the Apple headquarters, kind of stood in the lobby and
that's
said,
next level.
Guys, how do they've recently changed their requirements and things, so it might. I'm not too sure how recently you revisited it, but hit me up afterwards and I can help you with some of the pointers that we had as well.
Are you guys on the iOS store now?
Yes, thankfully.
Nice. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, we could revisit that, I would say.
There we go. We'll put a proposal together and
put it into the community fund and see what happens. So there's that, and one of the other things which I'm working on at the moment, which is a bit of a side project, because I've got a lot of chasing a lot of rabbits at the moment. Got a lot of things to sort of work on and maintain within NavCoin. Obviously, my main priority is NavCoin core and protocol developments and all that stuff. Also helping with some of the website stuff still, and keeping that going. But one of my side projects is a thing called the Kauri wallet. So Kauri, like the tree that we have here, big, strong king of the forest. It's like the idea behind it is to have a multi-currency, open source, privacy-centric wallet that features NavCoin, but you can have like Bitcoin or Ethereum and maybe one day DigiByte once it gets off the ground. Once my wallet gets off the ground.
Good distinction there.
That we're looking to bring a whole bunch of usability features to NavCoin. One of the big things that we've always said is we're trying to simplify cryptocurrency. One of the in-jokes we have is that it's crypto for your mum or your grandma. It's not quite there yet. It's still a bit complicated. But what I wanted to do with the Kauri wallet was to look at really how are people interacting with financial applications today. So your banking application, how does it work? You've got accounts, you've got scheduled payments, you've got contacts, you've got this, that, the other thing. And start to build some of those features that people are more familiar with in banking apps into a cryptocurrency wallet. So you can have a contacts list that's easy to use, like a bank one. You can have accounts where you might have like your savings that you put stuff there. You could like direct your staking rewards into your savings account. You might have You might have that one protected by like 2FA and a really big password, but you've got a checking account that just has like a couple hundred NAV in it that's just protected by a PIN number. So these types of convenience things, and looking to build that in at a wallet level. And I kind of thought, well, if I'm doing this is real awesome, and I want it for my NavCoin, but I also have a bit of Bitcoin and Ethereum and other things. So like, why not build? Because those are just UI features. Why not build a wallet that has all this cool banking style capability, but have it so we can add more currencies to it. It's not just NavCoin. So it kind of heroes NavCoin. But for sure, brings those benefits to other projects.
That's cool. It's one of the things as well that I've actually regularly talked about on some of my other podcasts, and even specifically on like my morning DigiByte updates. Is again, I like to kind of bring it up, like you say, would your mom use it? What does your mom get out of it, sort of thing. That's what I've kind of mentioned a number of times. And at the moment, sure, like if mom's into speculating, great. That's like cool for mom. Cryptocurrencies are jam. But there is so much that we need to simplify so that you can bring it to the masses. So my grandma sends me a message today on Facebook Messenger, and she goes, "Hey, so I've heard about this Bitcoin thing." Oh shit! And I'm just going. This is just going to go pure shit. Because the fact of the matter is I know that she's a lovely old lady, but trying to explain a public key and a private key to her is just not. It's not going to work. A recovery phrase, explaining that to her is just not going to work when she can't even remember her email password to sign into Gmail half the time. So. Yeah,
well, it is tricky. I think that like, especially for lower market cap coins, it's really hard to compete in the sort of direct payment space with incumbents like Bitcoin, for example. They're already in millions of shops. It does make it quite difficult. We can look to try and onboard new users and try and onboard payment gateways and convince shops to accept it and all these types of things. I think that there's a fundamental thing that we actually have to reel back a bit from and just go, hold on, what we actually need in a lot of these projects is more developers to help build these features that make it easy, and more infrastructure providers that are doing things like securing the network. So a lot of our efforts in terms of marketing and the way we talk about NavCoin and this community fund, kind of admit that we are trying to make this stuff easier and make these cryptocurrencies like an everyday payment network, but we're not there yet. And actually, a lot of the funding proposals and stuff that we see through are actually more targeted at developers, getting them to participate and getting them paid for their work.
Great though.
And also, like sort of advanced tutorials, like how to set up staking boxes and this type of stuff. You know what I mean? And these types of marketing communications. I'd say they're the two big target groups. If you can get those two really, really strong in a project, they're going to sort of feed off each other, and they're also going to just naturally attract stores to want to implement it because it's got all these cool features, and it'll slowly get easier to use, so more and more people will do it. And when you're ready, then you can do that big push out to the mass market.
Which again is great because you've got your DAO, you can have those rewards. So if somebody happens to get on national television or they want to run some ads on radio or whatever, you've got that funding for them if people think that it's a viable option.
Like a cool little one, like we mint like something like 500,000 NAV coins per year into the DAO, which at 10 cents a coin isn't that much money, right?
No.
So we're not doing these massive national like TV promos and whatever at the moment. When NAV coins if NavCoin goes back to ATH of it was like $5 a coin, you know, that's a whole different game. That's a lot of money in there. That's at the community's disposal to improve the product and also promote it.
Sure.
But at the moment, we're seeing more like really neat like grassroots things happen. Like an Uber driver, I can't remember which city, but he's put like iPads on the back of the seats in his Uber, and he's been sponsored by the community fund to run like NavCoin ads while he drives his Uber around.
That's awesome.
So, you know, and that's not that expensive. I think he's already got the iPads or whatever. It was just about creating the ad to run, and then, you know, giving him some money to compensate him for what he would be doing for missing out on playing other ads, perhaps.
Sure.
So, you know, like there's,
cool,
and that's just like a little thing. He was like, you know, I need a couple thousand nav to like do this thing, and I'll do it for like a couple months and drive him around and just promote it at a real grassroots level.
That's awesome.
Well, on the development side, we've had stuff like we run 2 bounty programs, basically. One for NavCoin Core and one for helping to maintain our websites.
Cool.
So if you're a web developer or you're like a C++ developer or you're an aspiring C++ developer or web developer, you know, anyone can sort of get involved. But there's these bounty programs where we got 25K, instead of having every little change needing a 6-week proposal funding request to get through for like 100 nav to update with 1 line of text on the website or whatever, you know, we sort of wanted to consolidate some of that. So we got 25K for each fund. And then the website one is maintained by me, and the core bounty fund is maintained by Alex.
Nice.
And then for small tasks, you know, we can assign out bounties and get people to contribute that way.
Cool.
So even if you're wanting to get involved, but you're not sure, you don't have the skills or the understanding of the community fund and stuff like that, you can basically just jump on these bounty programs as a developer. You can go onto the GitHubs. Well, so all the information's on navcoin.org under the bounties page. But you can go onto the GitHubs and look through the issues lists, and they're flagged with bounty reward amounts.
Nice, that's cool.
Or if the thing as well is that it all shouldn't be coming from us, right? If you have a cool idea for a feature or you see something wrong with the wallet or website or whatever, you can go and put an issue in and then request for a bounty assessment. Right. And then we can attach one, and then you can go and fix it.
Nice.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
It's designed to be kind of self-starting and help that kind of self-maintaining sort of feedback loop.
To bring people on as well, and hopefully broaden the developer base.
Totally.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I think maybe we should wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on the first ever DigiByte and Friends. Really enjoyed having you here. It's been great to learn about everything from staking to the DAO and community feedback and all of that sort of stuff. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for...
Covered a fair bit of ground there.
Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome.
So if anybody is curious, these are going to be semi-ad hoc. Feel free to tune in, hit the like, subscribe, stay tuned. We're going to be doing a bunch of different things similar to this. And again, a big thank you to you and to NavCoin. Not for the beers, but...
maybe next time.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, but then the next one. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for watching this episode of DigiByte and Friends. I hope you've learned some new things about NavCoin and all the topics we've covered today. If you want to find out more, just head over to the NavCoin website, www.navcoin.org. From there, you can easily find out more information about our community fund, staking NavCoin, bounty programs, our wallets, and how to get involved in our community. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, check the description below for all the links, and remember to like and subscribe.